何のことだ。
Green beam activate.
今頃は海の上だ。どこへ向かっている？極東、地下、牢獄。
牢獄？何のために？誰の差し金だ？
カズマ様。
カズマ。
俺が操る暗黒の力にかなうものは何もない。この世では力ある者が世界の支配者となるのだ。だが真の無敵を誇るにはただ一つ足りないものがある。究極の力、民道最終奥義。それを手に入れるためにお前がどうしても邪魔なのだ。わかるか、ショウ。貴様のことだ。
Alright, weird thing about that intro cutscene before I go into the usual intro. From my knowledge, you can only view that in the US version from the FMV viewer. It only plays at the start of the game in the Japanese and PAL releases, weirdly enough. Either way, hello everyone and welcome to Let's Play Shinobi Legions, the final game in our little trek through the older Shinobi games. Before we get into the main game, as usual, make sure to go into your options and change the controls to what you need, and the Shuriken count if you want to. Though honestly, out of all the games we've done thus far, this is definitely the one you'll be using Shurikens in the least, with at least my general control scheme, because this game feels a lot more melee focused. Also a brief note, starting from part 2 and beyond, load times will be cut out. Alright, so starting off, the game controls very closely to Shinobi 3, but there are some notable differences. First off, since you're on the Saturn now, you have 6 buttons to start with, so blocking is outright just a button in and of itself. I think it's Y and Z by default. You still have the ninja run, you still have the double jump and all that jazz, but you can do a few more things. For instance, you can now directly input a direction and a sword swing at the same time to do special types of swings, be they vertical, more vertical swings, stabs forward with a bit more range, things of that nature. In terms of the melee combat, this game feels like an outright evolution of the previous ones, though you are notably missing things like the drop kick from Shinobi 3, but in its place you got better things like the spinning, I can't remember the name, that move there, the one from that Zero gets in the PlayStation X games and the Zero series, and that Luke has in the Super Star Wars games. With that said, enemies now will usually drop items alongside the things you destroy in the actual stages. If it's a yellow or red ball, that's health. Blue orbs here are life orbs. Every 10 you get is an extra life. Sometimes you'll find swords. These are the Bishamon sword, I believe is what this is called. What this does, whenever you swipe your sword, you'll now summon the Bishamon statue behind you, which acts as an active hitbox, so anything that touches that takes damage. This is extraordinarily busted because it lingers for so long. With that said, you also notably have less health in this game than basically every Shinobi game we've done thus far that aren't the one-shot and you're dead games. Thankfully, I think the game's balanced around that more often than not, as enemies I feel are not only less aggressive, but better placed compared to some other games to make things a bit easier on your soul. Also, yeah, how about those FMV cutscenes? I think they're great. They're stupid, don't get me wrong, but there's a certain factor to them that I enjoy, a certain cheesiness. Though I should note, you may have noticed that the intro cutscene at least had some minor, like, skipping going on and things of that nature, and the aspect ratio is going to be a bit different than all the other FMV cutscenes. That's because, for some reason, the emulator I used to record the main game wouldn't load the PAL version, so I had to use RetroArch instead of BizHawk, which is my go-to for Saturn stuff. And that made things look a little weird. I'm going to assume the skipping is because of whatever problem was preventing the game from being loaded in. And I should note, there are a couple of differences to the Japanese or to the PAL release, rather. Namely, the music. The soundtrack in this game isn't composed by Yuzo Koshiro like the previous ones were, but the PAL region staff decided to go have Richard Jacques completely redo the soundtrack to make it more in tone with the previous games rather than what this game has. Either way, we're on to Boss 1, this floating Hannya mask. It can swing itself around in circles around the stage, light fire pillars up across the screen, throw its horns at you to explode, and that's about it. You can only hit it in the eyeballs, but as long as you're being very aggressive, it goes down faster than it can kill you as long as you enter with a reasonable amount of health. Also notably, through that stage, I got a little thunder orb there on the top right, you may have noticed. That's this game's equivalent to the Karyu ninjutsu from the previous games. It's a screen nuke. Or if you're in a boss, it just does a lot of damage.
ショーはすぐに現れるはずだ。
この右京左京、影の務めに寸分の誤りもございません。肉を切り裂く華麗なる剣の舞、とくとご覧ください。
Oh no, he's feeling stabby. You know, I kind of miss when games did live-action cutscenes like this, but in a way I also don't, because seeing how some games have done it in recent years, like the Resident Evil 3 remake and such, it just doesn't have the same energy as it did with, like, this or Mortal Kombat Mythologies. Don't get me wrong, that's not a good game, but the cutscenes are great. Back when they were, like, low effort and cheesy, but also you could tell they were trying their best, there was a real good feeling to that, whereas nowadays it just feels too professional, I guess is the way I want to put it. It's kind of like, I think the last time I enjoyed anything live action having to do with game advertising or anything was either that one Halo 3 ad campaign or the Devil May Cry 5 commercial. Anyway, starting off, Stage 2 is entirely vertical, and this game does retain the thing from Shinobi 3 as well, where you can hold up while jumping to cling on and hang on certain platforms, be it tree branches or otherwise. With that said, you want to be careful as you want to make sure you kill every enemy you can along the way, rather, as the life orbs are going to be super important later on in the case you start dying a lot in later stages, which, believe me, is very possible to do. This game is easier than Shinobi 3, but it still gets some annoying portions through it. And you also want to make sure you kill every enemy along the way, because sometimes enemies are what are going to have your bonus items, be it the Bishamon sword, the Thunder Dragon spell, or things of that nature. Also, I should note, the Thunder Dragon orb is actually the only real... No, actually, no. One of the 3 ways you get magic in the game. Because you don't have standard ninjutsu like we have in the previous games. You only have the Bishamon Sword, the Thunder Dragon Orb, and something that mirrors the effect, sort of the Fushin spell from Revenge of the Shinobi and Shinobi 3. But I believe what it actually is closer to being is the Blink spell from Final Fantasy, in that it just allows you to take some hits without losing HP. With that said, every single spell, or at least the Bishamon Sword and the Super Blinky, I'm using Blink from Final Fantasy spell, are timed as well as damage dependent. So if you take too many hits or you take too long, it will go away on its own. That said, we're already onto the mini-boss of the stage. Some stages have these. This guy's pretty easy because if you just hold the block button, he can't do much to you. He'll jump left to right, depending on which direction he's in after you hit him. Throw a shuriken spread, which you can easily block. And then when he's standing, he'll throw more shurikens at you, which you can still block. The block in this game is really good. There's only maybe 1 or 2 attacks off the top of my head that can still pierce it, and usually they're boss fights trying to do touch damage, or I think maybe these obvious lasers. And now we have the actual boss fight, who likes to roll all over the place or jump into the Bishamon Sword because his general strategy is to try to dodge your attacks and attack him from behind. But as you can see, the Bishamon Sword kind of gets rid of that strategy entirely. Honestly, I haven't fought this guy normally in so long that I don't remember what he tries to do. But he's dead, so that's all that matters. And that's stage 2. It's pretty simple. Mind you, I say it's pretty simple, but that's also comparing it to Shinobi 3 in the fact that I'm good at this type of game anyway. I know some people would probably still have trouble with that. And now we're on to stage 3, which has potentially one of the most out-of-nowhere appearance shifts in the game. Mind you, there's a couple of those, because this game's stages kind of go all over the place. Because now we're in a secret lab right out of a Resident Evil game. And notable, every stage does have a type of hazard you can destroy in order to potentially find items. In this stage, for instance, it's the glass tubes. But one thing you want to be careful of, like the main Shinobi games thus far, some of them do hide bombs that can damage you. With that said, I can't take the bombs very seriously, as even though they have one of the best ranges they've ever had in this game for damaging you, the sound effect they make is a stock sound effect I am oddly familiar with. Oh, this is the item that does the Fushin-like ability, by the way. Now I can take extra hits. The explosion sound effect that the bombs and certain enemies make when they die was used in a game I played growing up on the Game Boy Advance, namely Power Rangers Ninja Storm. Not a very good game looking back, but it's a weird here and that and something else again. Now, I said that the Shinobi, the Shuriken number in this game doesn't matter too much, and that's because despite them still being powerful for taking out enemies, they're about as strong as your melee by and large. I feel between the size of them relative to the size of some of the stages and the agility of certain enemies, I just don't find using shurikens that useful in this game. With that said, I think you do also get a Shinobi bonus or something for going through a stage without using any shurikens if it's anything like some of the other games. Mind you, it's not too bad, but it's still. With that said, if you do want to get max shurikens at 999, I believe there is a cheat code in the options menu where you highlight the shurikens option, hold L and R, and then press, I think, C, A, and B in that order from the top of my head. Might be something different. There's a couple of minor cheat codes in this game, like max lives. I think it's highlighting game start and pressing A, Z, B, Y, C, X, and then start. I know there's a level select, which is pausing the game at any point and pressing A, B, A, B, C, which allows you to go from like 1, 1, 1, 2, things of that nature throughout the entire game. Also, that was a weird mini-boss. We won't speak of that. It's pretty easy. There's one-hit wonder mode, which returns you to like the original Shadow Dancer stuff where you die in one hit, and I think that's highlight game start, pressing A, B, C, B, A, and then start. And I've never been too sure about the timing of this one, but I know there is an FMV viewer in the game. And I think that's during either the intro, meaning like the Saturn intro, or the game's title screen, pressing C, X, B, Y, A, Z, and then start. I've only maybe accessed it once. I'm very inconsistent on when you're supposed to do it. Either way, now we're on to the boss of Stage 3, a demon. This thing is a bit odd that it has poison breath that has some pretty good range, but its main attacks are either to hang from the bar on the ceiling and try to dive onto you, rolling into you, period, or hiding in the grass to try and come up on you and be like, surprise, bitch, and then slap you. With that said, you can do the same thing by just mashing the melee button until it's in front of you. There are a couple bosses in this game. I would say a Pyrrhic strategy is very good, where you just try to do more damage to them than they can to you. And having the Thunder Dragon Orb along the way really helps with that, because as you can see, that will do often like upwards of a fifth or a fourth of a boss's HP to them in one shot, barring when they're in invincibility frame. So that spell's pretty good. Try and find it in every level if you can, just to make things a bit easier on your soul. But that's Stage 3. By and large, a third of the way done with the game, even though this is easily the longest Shinobi game thanks to the length of certain cutscenes. What on earth? Oh, that's it! Oh, shit. Damn it! God, I love these cutscenes. As someone who grew up watching Power Rangers, this is exactly my kind of shit in terms of just the stupidity tone. And admittedly, at times, the action's still fun to watch, even if it's not the best choreographed. Either way, with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 2, I guess we're still hot on the trail of Aya. See you guys then.